Hello, Cheryl.
Hi there.
Everyone, this is Cheryl Lawson. She is a local business owner here in Tulsa. She's also the founder of one of my favorite conferences. Actually, I should say my favorite conference, especially here locally, SM Tulsa Conference. So, Cheryl, I'm going to go ahead and let you introduce yourself a little bit, talk a little bit about Social Media Tulsa, SM Tulsa Conference, and anything else you might want to touch on to introduce yourself.
Awesome. Hello, everybody. My name is Cheryl Lawson, and I am from Tulsa originally. And as many people who have been to our conference over the past 10 years, have heard this story before, but I'll give it a little bit and maybe try to keep it short a little bit here. But I'm originally from Tulsa. And of course, I was one of the wayward ones who went off to college and pretty much stayed gone for the most part. The last place I lived in was Southern California. And I was a part of this kind of growing social media community started by the 140 conference. And Jeff Pulver and a lot of great people in Southern California and around the country who were really into Twitter and other social media avenues. And when I moved back to Tulsa, I was kind of looking for that community of people who were very similar to all the folks that I used to geek out with in California. And so I didn't see that group already here, so I started it. And we had our first meetup on Greenwood at Fat Guys, which actually that location was where my dad's old office used to be. So it was really kind of a real coming home for me and a way to start a business. And really I was looking for other social media enthusiasts and people who could work together who were all kind of trying to figure out the tools of the social web. And Social Media Tulsa started. And it was really a community of people, right? Of like-minded, different business owners. We had a doctor, we had a lawyer, we had an acupuncturist, we had PR people. We had people from so many different backgrounds in the group that we were all able to work with each other and help each other. And it really became this wonderful community and network of like-minded people all helping each other. Then people started coming to our group wanting to learn more. So the conference was born from that, okay, we can't just all get together and just geek out with each other. We probably need to share what we learn and what we're learning from each other. We need to make sure we teach other people. So the conference, we had our first conference in March of 2011, and we were to have our 10th conference in March 2020, but we will have the conference in September. It was just postponed, and it will look different, right? We'll have it'll more than likely be some sort of virtual. We'll have some people locally who can social distance and all that good stuff, and then we'll have a virtual option. So that's all me. I said I would keep it short, but I didn't.
Well, we know you, and we know there is even more to you, and you are a boss lady in the best sense of the word. We love you, and I met Cheryl through SM Tulsa and also Mandy. So
Yes.
this weird, well, first of all, I didn't know the story about your dad's business and Fat Guys, and that's such a full circle thing. So that's really cool.
So my dad passed away in 2008, and that was really the onus of me wanting to get back home. And so I didn't want my mom to be here by herself. And so that was my journey. So that was 2008. So I technically moved back in 2009 or 10 or so. In fact, Mandy was at that very first meetup at Fat Guys. So Mandy's been down since day one, as I always like to say. So it's great to have her, and then you now working with her. It's kind of a full circle SM Tulsa story. I love it.
Yes, we at Crossroads are the biggest fans of SM Tulsa. And I went to SM Tulsa, I think it was 2014 as an intern, met Mandy there, and our paths just kind of continued to cross throughout the years. And now I get to work for her. So I was super bummed, that we had to postpone SM Tulsa conference this year. But in a sense, I'm trying to find the bright side of things. It gives us more time to tell people, register, get there, whichever way you have to get there. Join us for virtual or in person, however things, shake out. It is always such a great time. I never walk away not learning something new, or making a new friend or contact.
Same.
And it's one of my favorite collaborative places to be. So with that said, if you've not registered or you know someone that needs to register or might be interested, we're going to leave a link everywhere that this video is posted. So can't wait for SM Tulsa. However we get to be there. So what I wanted to do today, Cheryl, because this is social media day, which is really exciting, is just kind of talk about what's going on in the world of social right now. What's going on in the world is kind of all over. I have heard the phrase unprecedented times so many times in the last few months that it's just crazy, but it really is an odd time. And as marketers, we know that adapting is something that is kind of has to just come with the territory. And so I'm just kind of curious to know what trends you've been seeing, things that you think are interesting that you've been seeing out there, maybe some best practices. And I just wanted to pick your brain because I know that I have a lot that I can learn from you, and I'm going to assume that means there are a lot of other people that have things they can learn from you as well.
Well, it's, you're right. I mean, we've seen like, oh, these are unprecedented times, but it's for real. We've really never seen this happen to us before. But fortunately, we have these tools. And so as people were forced a couple of months ago to work from home, many companies and organizations were scrambling to try to figure out how to stay connected. There are a lot of companies who just weren't necessarily aware of how the technology could be used when you're working from home, right? So that's how we got, Zoom went crazy with its users. And then people started to realize, hey, we already have a way to stay connected with our customers, with our friends, with our families. And it's all Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok had an explosion, has had one since COVID-19. It was already kind of on the rise as a new platform, if you will, using maybe some of the techniques that have been around for a while, but they started to see a really big boost. I think people started to realize, and companies particularly started to realize how much they needed social media to stay connected. We started to see Facebook posts and groups really explode during this time with people who are like-minded. Again, I'm a member of several really specific interest groups, and those really became my lifeline, right? People who are into the type of food that I eat, people who drive the car that I drive, there's a group for that. People who own businesses locally, those groups were really starting to elevate with people saying, hey, here are our new hours. We have curbside pickup. People started having to come up with solutions. And fortunately, social was the way they communicated those solutions. And those of us who understand the algorithms realize, hey, if you're just now starting to talk to your community about your business, you're probably not reaching as many people as you want. So, we created a list at Social Media Tulsa. We created a list of all of the businesses that we were seeing posting their specials and their hours and curbside and drive-through. We created a list so that people could actually see locally where to shop, where to eat, how to survive in these times. But it was all, and the information was all shared from social media posts, social media groups, and then we spent a little ad dollars of our own to promote that list so that more people could actually see it and find resources for themselves. But I definitely have seen more businesses locally, especially communicating, sharing like I said, their hours, what they're doing. In Tulsa, of course, we have this this rally happening, and we're seeing those same businesses that had to communicate, hey, we're still open, or we're not open, or we've made the decision to go online with our business. Now they're communicating what they're doing over the weekend and how they're keeping their employees safe. And I just think it has, I don't know if it's turned the corner of people realizing the importance of social, but the necessity for sure has grown, and people are realizing this is the way that they're going to need to communicate with people as we go forward. I mean, it won't stop after we get back to whatever normal looks like eventually.
Right. Some of those adaptive behaviors that people have picked up on, they're going to continue using probably moving forward. And so,
absolutely. And some I know they won't use them ever again.
Yeah, that's true. Very true. I know for me, specifically with food, you talked about restaurants. First of all, I utilized that list that social media Tulsa made, and was able to see, what specials places were offering, who was doing curbside, who was doing pickup. And then outside of that, I know it's big for me. If I am thinking about eating out at all, I'm going to go immediately to that restaurant's Facebook page that I'm thinking about first, because hours are being updated, their specials are being updated. And it's definitely, just for me on a personal basis, I've definitely relied on that a lot the last few months. So you talked a little bit about behaviors that people are picking up on as far as TikTok growing. Like, there were different platforms that we've seen a lot of growth in the last few months. And I'm kind of curious to know your thoughts. We know people have more time on their hands, or had more time on their hands, especially in March and April. A lot of people were working from home. So do you think it was maybe a combination of more time on their hands, or I know a behavior that I've seen a lot of people kind of pick up on is that they want to see what other people are doing because they're lonely. They're sitting at home and they're like, isolated, not able to see their family. It's just an interesting concept. I think that sense of community that people found, even in TikTok, because there's a lot of relatable content going out. I don't know, just any thoughts on that as far as?
Well, I think what you were seeing is people trying to stay sane, right? We experience it on a much smaller scale during the snowmageddons in Oklahoma, right? If there's going to be a blizzard or snow, people are like, okay, we're going to be home for a week or 2 weeks. And so we do things to try to keep from going stir crazy. But this was different. A lot of people have been, sheltering at home since, mid-March. And so people were having to, like you said, look for community, look at what other people were doing. I personally have spent more time watching YouTube videos than I have ever spent in my entire life. Even as a social media person, I've spent more time, looking for recipes. People were baking and cooking and listening to TED Talks that, I'd save to watch for later. Going back to people's channels that I'd subscribed to but hadn't really watched anything in a while. So I know my own behavior was, I did have a little bit of time, unfortunately, because I was already working from home. Most of my clients, most of my workload didn't change, but I found that watching the news was, depressing at the very least. So, and then, regular television shows were, at the end of their series cycle. So that wasn't able to be a distraction. Sports are gone. So a lot of the things that kind of keep us mind busy were gone and not accessible to us. And so I think social became the new distraction, if you will, but it also allowed people to, I mean, I've seen people learn new languages. I know people were baking their minds off. And I tried it 1 or 2 times and, you know, gained 10 pounds because I ate all the things immediately.
Same.
So I was like, okay, I gotta let this trend go.
Yep.
But, you know, people were, especially TikTok, the dances on TikTok, everybody and their grandma literally were, you know, trying to learn these TikTok dances. I actually was definitely more of a TikTok viewer than a TikTok creator, just because who can be that creative all the time. But we have a Nest doorbell. So I post, and I'm always like, when I get to the door, because my brother has access to the doorbell, and so I'm always like doing some goofy dance in front of the doorbell. So I was like, okay, I'm just gonna make these my
Yes, I love that. I love that.
I think people were just like, okay, you know, if I've got to create some content, then here it is, or let's have some fun just to keep from going completely insane. And, you know, for me, I hadn't been out for, gosh, a month. You know, we were having groceries delivered because, you know, I live in the house with my 83-year-old mother. So I don't want to expose myself to then bring it home to expose her.
Right.
So, I mean, we just had to find ways to entertain ourselves, but we still had to do work, particularly people who are content creators in general. I have seen more content come out of those folks than ever. I mean, some of the YouTube subscriptions that I've had that hadn't put out a video in months or maybe even a year, they were, you know, pushing stuff out daily. So I mean, I think, you know, in a good way, it has given people time to really focus on what message they want to put out in the world, and also what they want to consume. And I think as digital consumers of information and content, we've had to really manage the stuff that we're consuming, right? And so that it was not all gloom and doom, or, you know, we had to, because it was in our face, but we also had to find ways to look for good news. I mean, the birthday party parades were some of my favorite things, and they warm your heart. And so people started seeking out more of that. And so hopefully those won't go away after COVID-19.
It was like kind of a twofold, right? So like you're talking about, we were given an opportunity to take a step back and create, and they gave a lot of people space and time to think about, what does this look like moving forward? Was I able to adapt? And what do the next 6 months look like? You know, it's a lot of just, I know for us, a lot of going back to the drawing board and reworking strategy, because a lot of people had Q1 meetings in January, and that was out the window come March. So just totally rethinking strategy as creators. And then as consumers, kind of like you mentioned, managing that overload, because not only was social our entertainment and our escape, but it's also our news, and it's how we're, you know, just consuming so much information. And that's something I wanted to ask you about as well. Something we've talked about a lot within our team is finding that balance between generating information for people now moving forward that have been so inundated with content the last few months. Where do we find that balance to not fatigue them with so much digital content? Is there a balance? How do we navigate that? And what are your thoughts on that? I mean, do you think people are getting a little bit worn out? How are they managing?
You know, I think there is some level of digital fatigue because we don't have those other distractions in our lives, and that can be a good thing, and that can be a not so good thing. I think the uprisings that we're seeing in the nation and really across the world are because people have had to focus on some hard truths about reality. The other thing is that people have had to focus on some of the hard truths and reality, and that it's becoming even more of a reason for people to want to escape, because, you know, you've also got to take care of your mental health, regardless of how active you are in sharing news or consuming news or even contributing to it. You have to find a way to separate and find time for yourself away from digital, and particularly for those of us who that's our job, that's hard to do. But there certainly is some sort of fatigue, but I think people are still turning to social. I think people are turning to those interest groups to find some comfort, right? So I drive a Miata. I'm a member of the Oklahoma Miata group, right? And so every day or throughout the day, people are posting photos of them either working on their Miatas, finding new things for their Miatas, pictures of their Miatas. My Miata became a storage shelf because it's been in the garage for 2 months.
Right.
So, but even just the simplicity of groups with special interests, I think people use that as a way to, I can still be myself, I can still be have my interests, but not be I don't want to say like faulted, so you don't have to put it on your own personal site if that group is private and everybody in that group knows that this is what we talk about here in this group. I think people were starting to see and find solace in those communities. And I know personally, I have enjoyed being in some of the groups and just talking about the things that we like to talk about in those groups. But yeah, Zoom burnout, that was one of the questions in the Social Media Tulsa group a few weeks ago, probably over a month ago now, is, hey, do you have Zoom burnout? And just about everybody, and this was like maybe 3 weeks into the shelter at home, and everybody was like, yes, I cannot do another Zoom call.
Right.
So I don't know if we've kind of went through this peak of virtual conference calling exhaustion to now it's just part of life. I was teaching a social media class at OSU Tulsa when the whole thing stopped. And it's like we had class on Thursday and then we got the email that said, hey, after spring break, we're all online. And one thing I recognized, because everybody was going to online, was that my students were probably going to have this type of fatigue, and that there was a level of anxiety attached to being on a Zoom call at the same time that you would have been in class.
Yeah.
So I didn't personally require my students to be on live calls. I recorded lecture and then gave them things to do, and then we had discussions around it.
Nice.
Because I think let's just say you're in a house, you're a student at OSU Tulsa, and your mom, your dad, your younger brother and sister are all home. And brother and sister have to be on Zoom calls for their, elementary education. Mom and or dad have to be on Zoom calls for their work. And the dog's loving life because everybody's home. That's
so true. So true.
Right? So, at what point do I take the responsibility not to add stress onto that family? And so I think, we don't necessarily think about, is the work environment or the home environment conducive for, live, real time, digital conversations, and how often does that need to happen? And I think some people overdid it because of trust issues with, if they're at home, they're not really working. And hopefully that is few and far between, but it's not new. I mean, I worked from home 100 years ago, and my boss always just assumed that I was, in my pajamas doing nothing. I mean, I was in my pajamas, but I wasn't doing nothing.
Right.
So hopefully that has the attitude of you're not working if you're at home has changed. And so you've seen a lot of the Facebooks and Amazons and Googles of the world are like, hey, if you want to work from home from here on out, you're welcome to do it, because they start to see how much it saves them on the office space and expenses. But yeah, I think, there's got to be a level of people just exhausted from having to be on all the time.
I really like that perspective too, because the more you were talking, the more it has me thinking. I think you're kind of right. I think initially it was just digital everything, everyone be everywhere all the time and tune into the Zoom call. And I think people burn out really quickly. And then, but as you're kind of talking through it, I'm like, yeah, I think that's probably right. I think we're kind of adapting to this is going to be a part of life for the foreseeable future, probably, and in some way or another for us, most of us. And so adapting to, okay, where's that balance between, do we really need to make this a team Zoom call? Or I know for us, we've taken a lot of things, just phone call meetings or, whatever that might look like, but just kind of slowing down on the digital consuming side of things so that we can be whole and happy humans, basically. I do have a question about that though, talking through groups, like you were talking about using specific groups to kind of find that community and not just be inundated with all the other information, but just focus on those, core pieces of yourself on social. And my question would be, as marketers, how can we be utilizing that as businesses or business owners? How do we utilize those Facebook specific niche groups to continue, marketing ourselves as businesses? What does that look like?
Yeah. So, every company, every brand has fans, right? People who dig them. And I'm not just talking about people who like your page, because there's a little difference between somebody who's truly a fan of what you do and somebody who is just like, I want to hear about them every now and again. So I think having a group allows you to peel off those, and depending on what size your community is, 100,000, take those people who are really, really interested in what you have to say and communicating with you in a more authentic way, especially those of us who may not like being, on Facebook Live or on camera. Inviting people to a private or closed group is a really great way to engage with those people who really dig you, because in the end, those people will then go out and advocate for you publicly. So one of the things that we've done with a couple of social media Tulsa clients, and I'll say social media Tulsa as a business, we specialize in social media for events. So, now that events are questionable, we've had to come up with ways to communicate with people using social, and groups have been one of the things that we've really focused on for at least a couple of those of our clients. One thing that we've done is if you already have let's say an email automation to greet people as they either sign up for your newsletter or sign up for your information or coupons, or however you have where people can connect with you. The first email automation is usually a welcome to the community email. And so we have added a join our Facebook group to our welcome email. Like, hey, if you really want to get to know us or want to get the news first, our Facebook group is where you would go and do that. And so a lot of people, everybody doesn't do it, but if they really have questions, or if they really want to connect with other people who either use your product or service or are coming to your event, they will go into that group. And I think it's really good to see, because then the conversations can be among group members, and you as the brand, you're not responsible for just marketing all the time to that group, because these are people who they all know you, or at least they've signed up to be a part of your group. And then you can encourage them to talk with each other. And then you can come in and give updates and news as you see a fit opportunity. One of my clients actually was starting a in-person business, and the launch was supposed to be this spring. So it was like a garden, and he was going to do like a farmer's market where people can come buy the plants that he'd gotten the seed and cultivated the seed and planted. So now he had to go completely virtual, do curbside pickup so you could order your plants online. And so that group started as a way for those people who bought plants to then share their garden and the growth, and here's the progress of things that are happening. So the why you start the group can be different. It can be like, okay, take people away from just the main, we're pitching all the time or whatever it is, to a real community and conversation. And regardless of what size the group is, they will then become your advocates out if somebody says something on your Facebook page that isn't true, and they've heard you already be live or add a video to what the real story is. And that's just invaluable for a marketer to have that group to be out and singing your praises.
It's almost like your own little army of ambassadors or something. Very
Absolutely.
Cool. I love that.
Absolutely. And ambassadors is another reason to have a group. Like we have ambassadors for the marathon, and they have their own private Facebook group. So we can actually communicate with them. We can share what we've got going on, so then they can go out and share on their own social accounts.
My wheels are spinning because I'm just like, oh, we can use that for this or this. But I do like that. And I think it plays right into the idea of more niche marketing with your, just consuming things that are more particular to you and your interests. And so I think that's great. And I think a lot of people will be interested to know that.
I will say Twitter has always been my favorite social network, and it continues to this day. And Twitter has probably housed the most diverse. And I mean, of course, it depends on who you're following and how many people you're following if you get that diversity in your stream. But I would say Twitter has been really good with people telling stories and sharing. Like the Twitter thread has been just like, reading a book. If somebody starts telling a story, you just can't let it go because people are sharing just some really interesting things. So I wouldn't just say Facebook, but definitely finding those hashtags or even those groups that will speak to your well-being.
Yeah, I like that. I had not planned to talk to you about Twitter, but that brings up a whole nother soapbox for me that I would love to get your insight on. So I know a lot of times with clients, we're talking through a social strategy, and it seems like more often than not, everyone is really big into, we need to have Facebook, we need to have Instagram, we need to have LinkedIn and YouTube. And Twitter sometimes seems to be the afterthought. And I know that it depends on the business. It probably just depends on what the strategy is behind using Twitter. But what are your recommended practices for Twitter? How should we be using that right now as businesses?
So, Twitter has always been best for real-time communication. News, that's why a lot of people get their news, and that's why a lot of news stations and casters are on Twitter. Twitter is probably the easiest platform to find other people who are talking about the same thing that you're talking about, because the hashtag was literally born as a communication tool on Twitter. Hashtags have been around as computer programming language for a long time, but people started utilizing Twitter in order to follow similar conversations. And Twitter has actually now taken that to a whole nother level with trends and explore. So you could actually go to Twitter and find out, what people are talking about in real time, and either get in on those discussions or steer clear from them, or at least just use them to learn. And I think one of the things that people don't realize is how much of a research tool Twitter is, and how people are having conversations either around your brand or around your industry. And so crafting messaging that speaks to your brand and your messaging. A lot of people don't find a lot of engagement on Twitter, and that's okay. I think what we should be teaching people about Twitter is more of listening, research, and then getting in when there's something to say. There are tools that, if this then that, or Zapier, if you want your Instagram to go to Twitter as a Twitter image and send people back to your Instagram. But I think the key in Twitter is customer service, responding to people who mention you or are complaining about something that you have the solution to, or even sharing an update about a topic that you are aware of, or even elevating other people who are talking about the things that are in your industry, right? So not everybody, Twitter Live and Twitter Stories, they're just they're phenomenal. Like, a lot of people still, for television shows, I know, what is it, Insecure. When Game of Thrones was on, people are still watching television while following hashtags.
Right.
The Super Bowl is another example. People are still utilizing the double screens, if you will, watching television and or whatever, YouTube videos, and then sharing in the hashtag on Twitter. So I think even if you're not using it as we're going to post this photo or we're going to post this thing to Facebook and to Twitter, you can still find ways to utilize Twitter, if only to research the conversations that people are having around your brand, to then craft what you're going to say to something else. But as a customer service tool, when people are ready to complain, they're going to Twitter.
Right. You better be
ready. So you should be ready with how you respond to people who mention your brand or who are talking about your industry. And particularly if you have a solution to something that people are complaining about.
Right.
You have an alternative, then you should be sharing, hey, I know, you had a problem with XYZ. Have you considered using this? Or, give us a call or shoot us a DM and we'll help you find the right solution to your ATM problem or your whatever it is problem. So, and when you're doing B2B, that might be harder to do because you're not talking necessarily to the end consumer, but you can still provide a resource for people in those conversations.
Right. I love the idea that it's not necessarily so much about the engagement or the number of people at one time, but finding the right person or the right conversation, the relevant conversation to jump in on. I think that's something that a lot of people will be interested to hear, because I know a lot of the time, since it sometimes becomes more of an afterthought for people in marketing, it's like, let's just regurgitate all of the content there. Let's just throw it all there and see what sticks. And that might not be the case for some people. It might be smarter to just kind of look for those relevant conversations to jump in on and find the one right fit for you and for your business, and
right.
I think
I'll give you one example. We had a group of photos that we had from one of our clients that is an event, and we did like all of the photos on a Facebook post with our caption. We did all of the photos with our caption as like a swipe through on Instagram. Mm-hmm. And then for Twitter, we kind of delayed posting for a little while so that it wasn't just all happening at the same time. We waited a few weeks after the post on Facebook and Instagram, and then used those same, I think it was 4 photos, as a Twitter thread, using the same caption, but using the language that Twitter speaks. Right. And I think that's the thing that a lot of companies and brands that are trying to figure out strategy. You can still recycle and reuse the same content, but make sure that you have a way to at least speak the language of each platform. Yeah. And make sure that it looks like you created it for Twitter. And even if it's not every day, even if you're having some automated things going to Twitter, make sure you add in a little bit of original content every now and again, just so people know, yes, you're still there and no, you're not just being automated. And then for sure, responding to people on Twitter is the utmost importance. And when they do respond or reply to something you've tweeted.
Right. I thought I would also ask you right quick about gig economy, because I know, okay, I've been using Instacart once, twice, maybe 3 times a week. I'm kind of embarrassed to say. Things like that. What are we seeing with that? Does that apply to social or even just as marketers? What can we learn from those businesses right now?
I'm so glad you brought that up. You know, we have been utilizing Instacart and Shipt almost exclusively. I haven't been in a grocery store since March. So, and I'm, been ordering from small businesses who are delivering. I mean, probably too much, but again, that's a way to support. But I think the message of the gig economy, like Shipt and Instacart and other services that are delivering, is, have you figured out a way to deliver your product to the consumer's house? Whether that's through shipping or whether that's door-to-door delivery. I know there's a tamale company, and I actually discovered them before COVID-19. I think it's Sooner Tamales. I'll tell you just in case I get that wrong. But they will deliver, they cook out of the Mother Road kitchen, and they will deliver to your house. I think there's a minimum of like 2 dozen tamales, but they will deliver to your house on certain days. And I think that is really, really smart. And they did a lot of social posts about, the days they were going to deliver, the days they were going to be open. So I think the messaging is from the gig economy and how popular that became is, have you figured out a way to get your product to your customer's doorstep without having to interact with them?
Love that.
So,
and I think that even can apply, if you get abstract about it, to B2B clients, because even if they're not delivering a physical product, the people they're trying to reach are probably at home. So that still changes the way that we shape how we're reaching them one way or another. So, right. There's one other trend I want to ask you about. And at least it's a trend that I think I have definitely noticed, especially in the last few months, but even within the last year, and I've been keeping an eye on it. And it's content, I have noticed with some marketers, is becoming less groomed. So rather than focusing on taking the perfect image with a DSLR pro grade camera and editing it to perfection, it's more of a behind the scenes iPhone snapshot. Hey, here's what we're doing today. Or, even video content. I love video, and we know that video is still extremely popular right now. But a lot of video content lately has looked like this. So is that something that you think is going to continue to grow, or is this just a timely thing, being that we're all at home and working over Zoom? What are your thoughts on that?
Gosh, I hope so. I think, especially for those of us who prefer just going live or just record, hit the button. So there's 2 types of marketing, right? There's real time stuff that we take with our phones. Something has happened. I went over to Greenwood and took a photo of the Black Wall Street mural yesterday to make as my cover photo today. So, that's real time. Most of our phones now have at least 12 megapixel cameras. I mean, there's some that are now 40 megapixel, 50 megapixel cameras. So you can get some really good quality photos and video with your phone. Then there's that polished stuff that traditional marketers and a lot of people have just like, it has to be perfect. It has to be edited. There has to be a really, manufactured cover image. I'm seeing a lot of that on YouTube trend right now. And I think because this happened, we're seeing a lot more people who would only put out the polished, highly overproduced and edited content, to them saying, hey, this is what's happening with us. Here's our story. Here's the here's how we're going to now navigate. Here's the answer to our new hours, our new way of doing things. We've seen television commercials that look like they were shot socially distanced and either with a smartphone or at least not so edited, and everybody's okay with it. So those of us who are just, you know, accepting of things not looking polished, I think this time for us was like, finally, people know it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be you. It has to be you authentically, your brand, whatever it is that speaks to you. And particularly the people who dig you already are going to be fine with it.
Right.
You know, we're seeing television programs. I mean, how many television shows where people from Zoom, we watched The Voice, where people were in their homes and, you know, even though they did some production back in the studio, it was basically Zoom calling and people performing in their living rooms or in their empty churches.
Yeah.
And so I just think we're getting used to seeing more natural and authentic content, especially church, right? Every church on Sunday, you know, how Facebook is accommodating all of that bandwidth, I don't know.
No kidding.
You know, every church is doing Facebook Live on Sunday morning. Bands are doing Facebook Live concerts, you know, from their driveways. So, you know, we're getting so used to seeing raw, authentic content that I don't know that we're going to demand that people go back to overly edited and produced content.
Yeah.
I hope we don't. I hope we're okay with brands being themselves and being human.
I'm right there with you. It has me thinking, I guess the fact is, if Jimmy Fallon can do it, then the rest of us can accept, or if SNL can do it, then the rest of us can accept that it's okay. And personally, as a consumer, I love it because I feel like you do get to see more of that brand and like really who they are when they're unpolished, I guess. And, you know, we're all human, so we like to see the human element in things as much as we think we would prefer to have a filter on it. I think that's probably part of it.
And we like to see the people or either the faces behind the people that or the brands that we support. And I think, you know, it's always been available to us. You know, people can go live or can just shoot a recording. Most people don't like to see themselves on video or to hear their voices.
Right.
You know, they're recorded. That's not unique to any one individual. So I think once people get over, okay, yep, that's my face. Yes, that's my voice. Then everything else can be a little smoother.
Right. That's going to be me editing this footage. That's what's going to happen.
When you have to go, I know, when you have to go through this going, oh my God, is that really, all right, it has to be.
Is that really what I sound like? I know, I'm with you though. I hope that this was kind of just that barrier breaking down a little bit more so that moving forward, we can focus more on the message and the strategy behind why we're doing the things, not just, oh, it's a pretty picture or it's a well-groomed video.
Right.
It's more the messaging, and I think that's what's important.
One of the business groups that I'm in, there are a lot of new entrepreneurs. You know, this time I think sparked a lot of people saying, you know what, I had this dream and now I don't have the job. So now I'm going to go after this dream. And I saw a question the other day of, you know, how do introverts manage social media when there's a lot about being out in front and being yourself and talking about yourself. Women particularly have a problem with talking about themselves and maybe bragging or, you know, being, you know, we're great, you should try our product or our service. And so I think that didn't go away, right? But I think people are just kind of stepping out into, just step out on faith and say, okay, I'm going to start this new business and I'm going to do, you know, this is me and hopefully people will love it. The alternative is to find someone else to be your spokesperson.
Right.
Right? So, my dog has an Instagram account. And if you are in the business where you have a pet or every veterinarian office that I have ever been to, and I've had pets pretty much my entire life, has an office cat.
Right.
Every single one of them.
Mm-hmm.
So why not give the personality to the cat? Because the cat sees everything that's happening in the office. So let the cat tell the story. Who's there? What happened? What's happening? Is there a sale? Did this dog get their shots? Like, create the character then, even if it's an animated version of yourself with all the avatars and things going around. Create something that can speak for you. And until you get comfortable to speak for yourself, or make that the speaker for you permanently. So
I love that.
there are ways to get around not wanting to be the face of something. Create a character or use your animals to do that.
Right. There's still a way to incorporate a human element and show who you are without necessarily having to have your face everywhere, if you choose not to do that, or if that's not part of your strategy. Because anyone that is a client knows at Crossroads, we're all about the strategy first. But
Absolutely.
I love all of that, and I'm just processing. I feel like I need to sit down. This is how I feel after I leave SM Tulsa conference as well. I feel like I need a solid weekend to just absorb, process, and then go back out into the world and use the things I've learned. And that's what I feel like right now. I love talking to you about this. I feel like I could probably pick your brain all day, and I will not do that because I've taken up a lot of your time today. But just to wrap up, well, first I should ask you, is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you would like to share, or anything you want to mention?
I don't think so. I think these trends are really good. I think we should be embracing social and digital platforms in all of its glory, and making strategies, like you said, not only content strategies but also the voice. Like, what do you want to sound like? What's the voice of your brand? And then make sure that it's consistent throughout. And the other thing is, I would love to say is, if you don't know what to say right now, it's okay. I know there's a lot of pressure to either say something or either don't say something. If you don't feel comfortable, it's okay to not say anything until you are ready and informed and ready to say something about either where your brand stands, or what your brand will be doing, or how you're opening, or whether or not you require masks. I get it. A lot of people are just anxious about what to say and how to say it. And if you're not sure, absolutely reach out to your communities and ask, what would you think if I said this, or if we made our policy this? And that's a really great way to start a group. By the way, that thought just came up in my head, right? Let's say you're not really sure how to reopen your business, and you have an email group, or you have a Facebook page that has so many followers. Invite those folks over to a private group and just say, hey, look, guys, we're going to reopen in July, but I'm having some anxiety about how to make that happen. We'd love to hear you tell us what you think we should do. I know one of the yoga studios that I follow and that I attend did the same thing. They did a survey, asked questions, if we limited the bathroom access, or if we turned off showers for a while. I mean, they asked real questions about the things that happen in that studio. Right. So I think, it's okay not to have all the answers, but, bring your community involved along for the ride of you trying to figure out the new landscape.
I like that a lot. And I think that's probably a lesson that could just be carried forward from this point on. It's something that a lot of businesses probably haven't thought about, but in any scenario that comes up, because I'd like to think we live in a world where crazy things probably won't happen anymore, but this has kind of got everyone's wheels spinning. I think it is always good to think through why you're saying what you're saying and where your stance really is on something before. It's not necessarily the rush to get information out there, so long as what the information you put out is in alignment with truth for you and your brand. So
absolutely.
I love that. And I think that's probably encouraging to a lot of business owners and those in charge of marketing for their business who are trying to navigate the waters right now. So I love that. SM Tulsa Conference is coming in September. What were the dates again?
September 17 and 18. We will have both a virtual and an in-person, hopefully. Y'all stay home, wear your mask, so we can have our conference. But more than likely, it will be a hybrid of some sort. So you can buy a virtual only ticket, and you can buy limited amount because we'll reduce the number that can attend in person so that we can all be safe. And our app actually has networking capabilities. You can there'll be polls and surveys. You can chat with our speakers and other community members. So there are tools already in place for us to be social, even if we have to be distanced.
Love that. And remind me of the name of that app again.
It's called Whova, WHOVA. And if you're already registered, you should have received an invitation to join it. If not, I'll probably just resend that since people may have taken it off their phone to save space. So if you've already registered, just look for that link to come again. If not, when you do register, you'll get a link to join the app.
Perfect. Okay. So at this point in the video, I should already have all of the social media handles up on the screen for ways to contact Cheryl, ways to follow SM Tulsa and register for the conference. Those should all be up here at this point. And guys, make sure you follow Cheryl and follow the SM Tulsa page. It's a great resource for anyone, any marketer, even if you're not managing social media. I promise there will be something you'll take away from it. We encourage you to join SM Tulsa Conference coming in September. Cheryl, I appreciate it so much. I need to go process all that I've learned.
Sorry. You wanted the brain. You got it.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much.